everybody and welcome back to my channel. I hate intros, so I'm just gonna jump right into this video. If you watch a lot of booktubers, then you may have been seeing this tag going around. It's called the Midyear Book Freakout Tag. I saw Katie's Reading and Books and Lala do this trend, and Gabby Reads, who are three of my favorite booktubers, so I thought I would add in my 2 cents as well. So before we get into the questions, let's do some stats first because I absolutely love stats. I have read 41 books so far in 2024, which comes out to 15,293 words. My best reading month was January. I read 12 books, which is probably my best reading month ever. I was pretty sick in January, so I had a lot of downtime to read. I think a lot of those were shorter books too, but we won't tell anyone that. My worst reading month was May, in my opinion, because I started like 5 different books and I wasn't really feeling any of them. I started one book that was like 600 pages, but it's not really the type of book you read from cover to cover. You kind of just take your time with it, read what you want from it. I didn't really feel super good about my reading month in May, but that's in the past. We'll leave it in the past. One other caveat I want to add before I jump into the questions is I'm trying my best to not mention the same books over and over again in these questions, but honestly, some of these I loved so much that they fit into multiple categories, so you're welcome. The first question is, what is the best book you've read this year? Now, true to form, I couldn't pick just one, so I have 4 here. The first one is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I absolutely adored this. I love the writing style. I thought it was gothic romance told in a very different kind of way, because usually a lot of gothic romances I feel like don't turn out well. Meaning the ending is sort of bittersweet, sort of sad, and I don't feel like this one had that. I think it had a really nice, it was tied up really well in the end. And Alex E. Harrow has been super hit or miss for me in the past, and so I went into this kind of feeling a little unsure if I would like it, but I absolutely loved it. This is probably one of my favorite books of all time now. The second book I have here makes me really angry and really happy at the same time, and that is Dracula in Love by Karen Essex. Would I recommend that you read this book? No. However, the first like 90% of this book had me feeling things I didn't know I could feel. I believed in love again. I believed in possibilities. This book was giving me everything I ever wanted in a book about Dracula. Dracula is one of my favorite stories of all time. It was erotic, it was well written, it had a great story, and then it all went to shit in the last 30 pages. Now you might be wondering, why is this on your favorites? Because I just love the first 90% so much. And I'm thinking maybe at some point I'll do a more in-depth video about this one, but it is one of my favorites of all time. Also, and I have a toxic relationship with this book, but I absolutely loved it. The next book I really loved this year was What My Bones Know by Stephanie Sue. This was just a beautiful portrait of somebody recovering from PTSD or complex PTSD rather. It's just so well researched and well written, and you really get a sense of what CPTSD was like in this author's life, and it's a game changer, I think. I had a lot of realizations reading this, and I absolutely adored it. And the last book I have, my favorites of 2024 so far at the midway point, that I recently just finished, is The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley. I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly, but I absolutely adored this book. I'm learning that something about myself is that I love when books make the impossible possible. So this book is about this ministry that has somehow found a door that can go through time, and you go back in time and you take people who are about to be killed and bring them forward in time to run experiments to see how their bodies will react to the modern world, and they get acclimated and all these different things. It mixes a lot of different genres, so it's sort of like workplace comedy kind of, but it also gets really serious. It's romance. I just absolutely adored this book. Question number 2 is, what is the best sequel that you've read this year? And I actually had to look up the definition of sequel because I didn't know if that just meant the second book in the series or any book in a series, and I found that it's any book in a series. So with that being said, I have Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. This is my favorite one in the Stormlight Archive so far. I love the characters, I love the story. I think Brandon Sanderson does an amazing job of giving us in-depth story building and characters. I mean, it's 1,300 pages. This is also the longest book I've read this year. Another sequel I read that I loved, I don't own it because I got it from my library, and that is What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher. I was very surprised by it because I really enjoyed, what's the first one called? What Moves the Dead. I enjoyed What Moves the Dead. I don't remember what rating I gave it, but I gave the second one, What Feasts at Night, 5 stars. It was so creepy and it actually legitimately made me feel uneasy. I loved the setting of it. It takes place in this cabin in the woods, and the monster in it I thought was really interesting. Types of horror I love seem to involve things that could be interpreted as real life horror, if that makes any sense. Like, this one incorporates the idea that there's like this demon that sits on your chest while you sleep, which a lot of people experience things like sleep paralysis, so that made it 10 times scarier for me. But it's also been a while since I've read it, so I don't exactly remember the plot, but I really enjoyed that book a lot. Question number 3 is, what are the biggest disappointments of the year so far? And for me, this has to be The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow, which again, is crazy because she has one of my favorite books of all time. But I just didn't, I don't know, something about it did not click with me. I found myself feeling irritated and just rolling my eyes a lot, and I just couldn't wait to get through the book. And by the last 100 pages, I was just skimming through. I was like, all right, I need this book to be over. And it's not like it's badly written. It's not like it doesn't have an interesting story. There was just something about it that did not jive with me, and I don't know why. So I thought that that book was going to be a new favorite because it's Alex E. Harrow, it's written about witches, and it's a period story, a period timepiece, and so I don't know, but that was a pretty big disappointment. Question number 4 is a new release that I haven't read yet. The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo came out earlier this year, if I'm correct, and I read the first couple of chapters before I went on a trip overseas, so I didn't have time to finish it. So really excited to get back to that one because what I read so far I thought was very interesting and atmospheric and creepy. Question number 5 is the most anticipated release for 2024, and for me that is Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. I am really excited for book 5. I don't even know why because I haven't read book 4 yet, but I just have a feeling about book 5 that it's really going to wrap up everything really nicely. Question number 6 is, what are the biggest surprises that you've had so far? And I've had a lot of surprises. I have Starling House by Alex E. Harrow, again, because Alex E. Harrow has been hit or miss for me, and I just couldn't believe how much I loved this. The third book in the ACOTAR series, A Court of Wings and Ruin. This surprised me so much because I'm not the biggest ACOTAR fan. I liked the first book. I wasn't a huge fan of the second book. Again, please don't kill me. But I still wanted to know what happened, and I am a completionist. I like to finish things, so I picked this one up thinking it wasn't going to be good, and I loved this book. I cried. I want to go live at the night court, or me and everybody else, or even the winter court seems cool. But I really, really loved this. I was shocked. And then I also have The Ministry of Time again, which I had a feeling I would really like this, but I was still surprised by the subject matter because it's so specific. The man that they rescue in this and bring him forward in time is a part of another story that has seemed to follow me throughout my life in the past few years. And so I was just like, oh, that's who they're saving. And so the fact that there's a romance with that character, it just it made me so like giddy. It made me really happy. So this really surprised me. And then finally, Dracula in Love again surprised me in good ways and bad ways. But the main reason it surprised me was because it's just a random book that was written in like, I don't know, 2010, something like that. I don't remember the exact date. And I found it at my library. It's one of those books that probably nobody ever checks out. You know, it doesn't have a lot of reviews on Goodreads. And I was thinking, oh, this is probably not gonna be that great, but I loved it until I didn't. Question number 7 is a new favorite author. I'm deciding to modify this to an author I've read the most this year, because I don't really think of myself as someone who has favorite authors. So instead, the author I've read the most this year is T. Kingfisher. I've read 4 of their books. I've read What Feasts at Night, What Moves the Dead, Thornhedge, and Nettle and Bone. Question number 8 is, who is a new favorite character? Now, I'm really trying to keep it to 2024, because if I wasn't to do that, I would say Dallin Arcolin. I love him so much. He's one of my favorite characters of all time, but I'm trying to keep it to books I've only read in 2024. So in that case, I would say Raven from One Dark Window. I thought he was a great love interest, a great foil, a great companion to Elspeth, is that her name? Yeah. I really enjoyed his character. I thought he was very honorable and so unlike so many romantic interests I feel like we read about in a lot of fantasy these days, young adult fantasy. I don't know, but I really liked his character a lot. And I guess if you were to say like a new book crush, then you could probably say Raven too. Again, I don't know if his name is Raven or Raven, but I'm choosing to say Raven because that seems a little less lame to me. Question number 9 is, what is a book that made you cry? Now, I know a lot of books have made me cry this year, and I've learned that just because a book makes me cry doesn't necessarily mean it's a new favorite, but What My Bones Know definitely made me cry. This gave me sort of an existential crisis after I read it. I was like, I need to reevaluate some things in my life. A Court of Wings and Ruin made me cry. There's one scene towards the end that really got me. Those are all the ones I can remember off the top of my head, but I know that a lot of other books have also made me cry. Question number 10 is a book that made you happy. And for me, I would say that is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This one I know is like everyone's least favorite, and I don't know why, because I thought this was very cozy. It was a nice respite, is that the right word? Relaxing time where the characters aren't running off to save the kingdom. They're just, it's sort of like the winter special, I guess. At the time I was reading this, you know, it was still chilly here in Los Angeles, so I had my fireplace going and ambiance and some wine and a cozy blanket. It was just the perfect time. Question 11 is the best book to movie adaptation, and I'm just going to quickly say I haven't seen any this year, so I don't know. On to the next. But if you have any recommendations, then let me know down in the comments. Question number 12 is the most beautiful books you've acquired this year. And I don't really buy too many books anymore. I try to go to the library or listen on Libby to audiobooks. But I did think of this one, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I think this cover is just really cute and sweet. I like the deckled edges, and I think it's very aesthetically pleasing. And question number 13, the final question, is what are some books that you must read before the end of the year? Now, I tend to not make lists for books that I need to like keep a rigid, this is what I must read this month or this week even. I tend to keep it sort of looser. But I'm in the middle of The God of Endings right now by Jacqueline Holland. I'm about halfway through it, and it's very good so far. It's very sad. I feel connected to it in the sense that I can relate a lot to the main character in a lot of ways, but I'm unsure right now where this is going to sit on a rating system for me. I also recently got The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, and I know this is highly controversial. It's banned in some prisons. I don't really see it as controversial because these types of things exist, you know? I think it's fine to know that this type of human behavior exists, and find it still fascinating and interesting to read about. And so I actually am enjoying this. I think it's very interesting. And then I also need to read Rhythm of War before December so that I can prepare for book 5. I've read a little bit of it, but I sort of put it aside because I was like not in the right mood to read it, I guess. And finally, the only book I have left that I definitely want to read before the end of the year is the final book in the ACOTAR series, A Court of Silver Flames. I'm excited for this one. I've heard that she's going to continue writing books in the series, so this is probably not the last one. This one has a reputation, so if you know, you know. And I'm sure if I looked at my Goodreads, there would be like another 100 books that I want to read, but if the current rate continues, I've read 41 books. Maybe I'll get close to 100 by the end of the year. We'll just have to see. But with that, that was my contribution to the mid-year book freakout tag. I very much hope you enjoyed. I hope I gave you some good recommendations. If you have any books that you've been loving this year, please leave them down in the comments. Let me know if there's anything else you would like to see from me. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.